Welcome everybody. I'm Andrew Deans. I'm a lab head here at St Vincent's Institute. Wamanjika, welcome to our student information session. I'd first like to start by acknowledging the Wurundjeri people as the traditional custodians of this land where St Vincent's Institute is based. Indigenous Australians were our first scientists and have made discoveries on these lands for tens of thousands of years before our institute was built. I'd like to pay respect to the elders of the Kulin Nation and extend that respect to other Indigenous Australians who might be present today. So welcome to all the students, and hopefully you've come along to learn a lot about St Vincent's Institute. So we're going to tell you as much as we can, particularly how to be a student at SVI. If you're not familiar with where we are, here's the University of Melbourne, and if we just zoom in here closer to the centre of the city, you can see we're right here opposite the Carlton Gardens. We're on the campus of St Vincent's Hospital. It's a great place to work. We're very close to the CBD, which begins just over here. It's a short walk up Nicholson Street to the Parliament train station. We've got the culture and cafes of Fitzroy nearby. And we're also next to this fantastic park, which is great for lunch and just for relaxing on a busy day when you're perhaps a bit swamped with experiments. So now you know where St Vincent's Institute is. I'd like to just kick off with a brief program for what we're going to be doing today and what we're going to be introducing to you. So to start with, we're going to have Professor Natalie Sims, who's the Deputy Director of St Vincent's Institute, give us an introduction and overview to SVI, and talk a lot about who we are, what we do, and of course our motto is inspired by discovery and driven by purpose. Then you'll come back to me and I'll talk a little bit about what student programs are available at SVI, both as an undergraduate or postgraduate student, and give you a few tips about how to write an email that's going to help you get an interview with one of our fantastic scientists. And then we're going to finish up with a Q&A student panel. We've got three current students, Priya, Sam and Lee, who are going to be talking about what life is like as a student at SVI, and answer any questions that you might have. So please think about those questions that you might have during what you're hearing today, and I guess any questions you might have about student life, about the student process, and gather as much information as you can. So next I'm going to hand over to Natalie, Professor Natalie Sims. So thank you, Natalie. Natalie's our Deputy Director and she's going to tell you about SVI.
Great, thanks a lot, Andrew, and welcome everybody. I'm glad to have you here for this session. So I'm going to tell you a bit about our institute. Andrew's already shown you where we are. We're right on the campus of St Vincent's Hospital. And so you can see opposite Carlton Gardens. This is the map version rather than the 3D version that Andrew has shown you. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about what makes SVI different to other places where you might be considering doing honours, a bit about who we are and what we try to do. The fact that we're on a hospital campus, that's because we're a medical research institute. We do research into a range of diseases, and our mission is to really do world-class science, and our motto is inspired by discovery and driven by purpose. What we want to do as an institute is to make medical discoveries that can transform lives, and we value things like integrity, being open-minded, being dedicated to our work, and striving for excellence. I've been at St Vincent's Institute for a long time, but I also did my honours and my PhD studies at a medical research institute. For me, I grew up in Adelaide, and I did it at the Institute of Medical and Veterinary Science, which no longer exists because I'm super old. But one of the reasons why I loved doing my honours and PhD years and why I continue to work in a medical research institute is that it's a very different environment to a university. And I want to tell you what that's like, because you probably won't have experienced what life is like in a medical research institute. And I'll tell you a bit about our institute along the way. So this is a picture of one of our researchers, and the heading I've put across the top is that making discoveries is really our main business. We have scientists within our institute who are world famous for what they do, and we work on a wide range of conditions. The only students that we have at SVI are students who are doing research. We're not responsible for undergraduate students, apart from those who are doing research programs. We don't run courses that happen at a university. So we have students who are learning how to do research and who are involved in doing meaningful research that's contributing to the work that we do to find new treatments for a range of conditions. We're not interested in just keeping you busy and giving you a piece of paper at the end. We want you to be able to make discoveries that contribute to what we're doing. Your work is really important to the work that we do as well. If you're doing higher degree research at our institute at SVI, it means that you're doing real research with a team of people whose main concern is to make discoveries. And our scientists are really driven to carry out interesting and useful research. And we work alongside our students to make sure that what you do is also useful. You're not just writing a thesis, you're not just filling in a document, but we're really training the next generation of researchers, and that's really important to us. Oops. We work on a wide range of conditions. We don't have a particular theme for the research that we do at SVI. Our main theme is that we do really good research that's going to have impact on the health of many people across Australia and across the world. And here's some examples of the type of work that we do here. You can see that some of our work is focused on particular diseases, and some of it is focused on particular types of research. So for example, my group works in bone cell biology. We're interested in the disease of osteoporosis, but there are other people, for example, who might work in structural biology, so looking at the structure of proteins, and that's applicable to a range of other diseases such as Alzheimer's disease. So we've got a wide range of different conditions that we work on, and our research really spans from the molecular level right through to clinical studies. So we have people who are working on the basic structure of how RNA and DNA are processed within the cell, or how different parts of the cell work, right through to clinical trials for diabetes and for lymphatic and regenerative surgery. So we do a really wide range of stuff, and everything in between. So cell culture systems, organoids, as well as some small animal models of different diseases that we work on. Because we do a wide variety of, we work on a wide variety of conditions, we also work a lot across different teams. And this is a photo from a few years ago of someone from my team and some people from another team who've worked together on some projects together. Our institute is pretty famous for being a very friendly place to work because we're small. We get to meet each other in the tea room, we get to meet each other over drinks, and we end up coming up with projects that work together. So this is a photo of me from a couple of years ago with a previous PhD student, Christina, who did a study that used techniques from our lab, but also collaborated with Toby, who was doing a PhD in another lab, because it turned out that the techniques that he was using for measuring autophagy, which is intracellular recycling, actually provided an answer to a question that Christina was working on to try and understand bone fragility. And that meant that we could work together. And we're here with a structural biologist, Chris, on the right of the image, celebrating when Christina got her first grant at the end of her PhD. And there's a lot of stories like this. This is just one example about how we work across different disciplines and how you get to know people from other divisions and know people who are using other techniques. So when you're studying at SVI, you don't just learn from your own project, you also get to talk to other people and hear about the sort of methods that they're using and the sort of diseases that other people use within our institute. As I mentioned, we're a fairly small institute, but we use resources all over Melbourne. So this is another picture of me again with Christina. We did quite a bit of work at the Australian synchrotron. And this is one of our first times out there using the instrument there. And that's true of just about everybody at SVI. We use resources at the University of Melbourne, at Monash University, and basically wherever we need to. So we're not limited by what we have within our building, but we can use many other facilities around the place. So things like X-ray diffraction, cryo-EM, light sheet microscopy, all of these different techniques, we're able to access all of them from our institute around the rest of Melbourne and further abroad than that. Another thing about our institute is that we've got people from all over the world that work with us. And this is a photo of my team out for lunch some years ago. And at that time, we had people in our lab who were obviously from Melbourne, but also people from Japan, Austria, Argentina, and China. And that's just a snapshot of how it works. Because the lab heads in our institute are world experts, it means we have visiting PhD students and visiting scientists from other laboratories around the world who come to learn from us, who learn our methods and our techniques, or bring their techniques to us so that we can learn from them. And then, of course, our students and our researchers also go overseas as well to talk about the work that they're doing, to speak at conferences, and to set up collaborations with people around the world. So we're really involved in a global exercise of doing research. One of the things about being a research student, whether it's honours or PhD, is that it's sort of like doing an apprenticeship. This is your first experience of what it's like to actually work in a lab and to have essentially a full-time job in research. This is a photo of a recent PhD student again. This is Martha, who's just finished her PhD in our team. And during her work, she worked alongside other researchers, learning their techniques, but also she learned how to think like a researcher, how to design her own experiments, how to train others in using her techniques, and then how to execute experiments. And she was really totally immersed in what life is like to become a scientist, and she's now an excellent scientist in her own right. When you do research in a laboratory, you don't just learn lab skills. Sorry, we're on a hospital campus, which means we get hospital emergency signals. Just give us a moment.
Respond grade 10 West, room 2.
Great. So you don't just learn lab skills. Part of doing honours research or PhD research is learning how to write and also learning how to present your research to others. And this is a photo of one of my former students, Nilofer, who's presenting her work at a conference in Korea. So she learned how to present her data and was able to travel overseas and present them. So you'll learn how to work in teams, how to establish networks, how to write, how to speak. And they're skills that are not only important for research, but important for anything that you might choose to go on and do after you've completed honours or your PhD. Finally, I want to just end with a bit of a personal story, which is, this is me a long time ago, getting my PhD. I did a science degree. As I mentioned, I'm from Adelaide, so I studied a Bachelor of Science. And when I got to the end of it, I wasn't actually intending on becoming a scientist at all. I had other things in mind, but decided to take a year to do an honours degree at the University of Adelaide at a medical research institute, and it literally changed the course of my life. So, you know, doing honours can be life-changing. For me, it was a great decision. I did a year of research. I loved the project I was doing, and then I stayed on afterwards to do a PhD, and I still work in bone research. It's become a lifelong passion of mine, which I never would have discovered if I had not spent a year doing honours. So for me, this was a life-changing thing. It could be for you. You might already know that science is something that you want to do. It's been a really great life for me working in this field, and I do hope that you can come and join us and experience what it's like to do a year of research. So that's all I was going to say. I'll hand back to Andrew, who's going to talk to you about how to make contact with us and how to come and see us here at SVI. And we really look forward to welcoming you here in person so you can see what our labs are like and talk to our researchers here. So I'll hand back to Andrew. Andrew, you there? Great. Andrew, if you're talking, you're still muted. So. All right, Andrew's just getting his slides up.
Sorry, I couldn't find the unmute button. I'm running too many different things at once. There we go.
That's all right. We got you now.
I'm back again. Sorry about that. Cool.
No worries.
Issue. Let me just share my screen again.
Terrific.
This one here. Okay. Now I'm skipped ahead too many slides. All right. Can you see and hear me now, everybody?
Thumbs up. All good.
Okay, great. So I started talking, but obviously nobody could hear me. And I said, thank you very much, Natalie, for that fantastic introduction. You've already given us some great insight. And I should point out that Natalie is one of those world-recognized international experts in her field. She's a fantastic scientist, fantastic person to work for. So definitely put her on your list of potential supervisors. So I'm going to give you a little teaser just to begin with. At the end of the session today, we're going to give you some information about how you can register and come and do an in-person tour here at St. Vincent's Institute, and that's going to take place next week. All right, so please remember, if there's any questions you have throughout the presentation, you can enter them into the Q&A box. We already have our students online. They might be able to start responding to some of your questions, but the majority of them will leave to the end for the Q&A session during the student panel. So SVI has a number of different opportunities for students, both undergraduate and postgraduates. And these including lab positions like research assistants and technicians if you're employed. But in terms of the majority of student, it's part of your coursework. So we have a really strong emphasis on undergraduate and graduate training as part of the individual lab programs. And a lot of the best research that's coming out of SVI is actually conducted by students. And a lot of the students finish an undergraduate work placement, and the work that they've undertaken actually contributes towards a research publication. Of course, you're much more likely to achieve this if you do one of the longer programs, but you can look at all these different career opportunities and student opportunities on our website, and I'm going to keep coming back to those links. Okay, so there's a variety of undergraduate student placements through different universities that are available at SVI. And we have links, for example, with University of Melbourne, ACU. We've had students from Deakin and La Trobe over the years. If your undergraduate degree offers the opportunity for a project placement in a lab, we always are open to taking those students on here at SVI. These are usually conducted in third year. However, we have had second year students coming on summer studentships, for example, and you can have a look on our lab on our institute website later in the year for summer studentships that might be available, for example, in those opportunities. There's also some undergraduate coursework projects, for example, through the University of Melbourne and ACU. And if you know someone starting second or third year undergraduate studies, let them know about these opportunities being available at SVI as well. Okay, so honours is probably where the majority of our students enter SVI and then often go on to be masters or PhD students. And the honours year is a really exciting year. It's really intense, but it really immerses you deeply in the research process. You're working very closely with other researchers, with your supervisor, and on other people within the Institute, and as we heard from Natalie, in collaborative efforts with people at across Melbourne and even across the country, if the lab that you choose is working on kind of interstate or international collaborations. So these projects give you the opportunity to make a unique and new medical research discovery. They also give you that best opportunity for learning a wide set of technical skills, communication skills, which is one of the most important aspects of medical research, is being able to communicate ideas and communicate your results. And by the end of it, you really should become an expert in your chosen research area. As Natalie mentioned, it's kind of like a probation or a apprenticeship, and it gives you all of these skills in a kind of intensive program. So it's a one-year degree program. There's a lab-based research component, which is about 75%, and then there's a coursework component that's about 25%. But that coursework component is really intensely focused on important components of doing medical research, such as statistics, presenting work, analysing other people's work, and writing abstracts and writing literature reviews and so on. So it's a really fantastic year. I've supervised many honours students over the years, and it's always a really rewarding experience for researchers as for supervisors, because you really get to see the students grow and flourish. They get a little bit stressed towards the end, but you always come out with a really positive experience. And like Natalie said, a lot of students go into honours not really knowing whether they do want a medical research career, and it can really help to cement you one way or the other as to where you want to go next. So very similar to the honours program is actually a fairly new program that the university runs, which is a master's degree. And this has a fairly similar sized research component, or however, it's spread over 2 years. So this gives you the opportunity to be a bit more, get a bit more in depth into understanding different aspects or working on some complementary techniques, for example, towards a project. But there's also a larger amount of additional coursework. So it allows you to end up with a similar degree, but with a greater amount of knowledge and skills. And this is particularly useful for people who are looking, for example, to add on some additional subjects around commercialization or around the increasing scientific communication or developing their skills in complementary areas to the research that they're undertaking in the lab as well. And I've had a couple of really good master's students who've done exactly that and have gone on either to PhDs or onto other careers working with a medical or scientific link. Okay, so but the primary difference to the honours degree is that the master's is a 2-year degree. And finally, really the pinnacle of research training is the PhD program. And in a PhD, you really learn to design and execute your own experiments. You become the lead investigator. And at the beginning of your PhD project, the supervisor knows more than you, but by the end of it, you know more than your supervisor, and you become the expert. You become the person who's made the significant discoveries and the big contributions to research. And you really learn all of these additional academic aspects, such as how to formulate scientific experiments, how to understand in exquisite detail a very specific experimental approach, and designing new technologies or designing new diagnostic tests, or coming up with an understanding about the molecular basis of how a particular enzyme works. These are really exciting projects. The PhD I look back on my PhD years as some of the most exciting of my life. You also obviously really hone your communication skills, like I mentioned, scientific presentation, and just talking and discussing and debating, and really getting in depth into the understanding and communicating your ideas with other people, and listening to their ideas and bringing together those ideas. It's great for your brain. All right. So I've talked maybe a little bit too much about the different options for undergraduate and postgraduate study at St Vincent's Institute. But how do you actually come and find a project that's right for you at SVI? So really all you have to do is go to the SVI website, svi.edu.au. And I've clicked that through to here. So hopefully that's coming through on the connection. We've got a whole lot of resources here about research and study, the research that's going on at the Institute, and then within study, the student opportunities available, which I've already talked about briefly. There's some great interviews with current students, and they talk about what it's like to be a student at SVI. Some more information about the laboratory visits. But if you're looking for a particular project, you can click on student projects, and it will give you all the currently available student projects that are available at the Institute. You can select a particular area of focus. So if you're interested in cancer, click on cancer, and it will give you all the projects that are related to cancer. You can scroll through those and see kind of what takes your fancy. Oh, here's a good one here from my lab. You can then click on the link, read a little bit about the project, get some information about the supervisor. You can have a look at the supervisor's profile. You can see what their research interests are, their achievements, publications, what the lab composition is, and you can read all about the projects and collect as much information as you can. You may also have an interest in immunology, or you can type in keywords, for example, diabetes, if that's your area of interest. And then you have all the projects relating to diabetes. This particular one here with Professor Helen Thomas is available for PhD students or honours. Obviously, the project will be tailored specifically relating to whether you have 8 months in an honours project or 3 to 4 years in a PhD project. But often what happens is that honours students work on the project in honours, and then they continue on as a PhD student. Okay, so then you're going to have a look at the contact for this particular project. We've got the email address directly there that you can click on. You can send this person, you can send Helen an email, and you can say, Helen, I'm really interested in coming to do a project in your lab. And so that's how you find out about the projects. So everyone should be on there having a look at what's available and finding the projects that's just right for you. All right, so then of course, like I said, you want to contact the particular lab head. We've got lab heads at all different, supervisors at all different career stages. Some people like to work directly with the big professors. Some people like to work in a more personal, smaller and perhaps exciting area of research from one of our younger researchers. So definitely have a compare and contrast those different opportunities. There's a lot of opportunities for different research leadership styles as well. And we don't just have academic research labs at SVI. So some of the projects and being offered linked to our service facilities. We have a biological isolator facility in flow cytometry. We have biobanks for tissue samples. There's specialised teams at the Institute involved in clinical applications. So we actually have Australia's only pancreatic islet isolation team, which is used for treatment of diabetes. There's the current Bandit trial for treating type 1 diabetes. And there's some preclinical trial services, which we've recently incorporated the NRL National Reference Laboratory into SVI. There's a reagent, they're involved in lab quality testing and accreditation, primarily for non-infectious diseases. But they're also working to develop and conduct research in this area as well. And it's actually some pretty exciting stuff, especially after the pandemic and scientific reagent manufacturing. So outside of the lab, we've also got a communications and education team. We have a business development team, and they can help to plan and translate the work that comes from student or other projects to biotech. And I had a student whose project went on to be licensed to a company, and she's now involved in actually working with the company to develop that as a potential drug for cancer therapy in the future. So We also have other aspects that are just required in a medical research institute, such as building operations and lab maintenance, occupational health and safety. And finally, there's the really critical teams in the foundation, fundraising and grants office who interact directly with scientists. So students get to interact and learn from all of these teams. You're not just working with with bench scientists. You're also working with all of these people. It's a really important component of your training and understanding. And because we're Natalie said we're small. I don't like to think of this being small. In fact, we're actually kind of medium, and that's perfect. I've worked in big places before where it's a bit impersonal. You're just kind of one person amongst, hundreds or possibly even thousands. At SVI, there's around 200 people. You know all of the people that work in these teams. You can ask them questions directly. There's no bureaucracy. It's a really fantastic opportunity but we're not too small that we don't have these things either. So it's kind of just right. All right. So this gets me back to making contact with with a lab head about a project. So this is just an example of a type of letter that you should not write. I've received many applications from students, both within Australia and from across the world. And whenever you have a letter that's from somebody that doesn't address you directly, I just immediately hit delete. Furthermore, there's no information about why the student's interested in the project, anything about them, anything about why they want to come to my lab. And then there's straight away up front something that only affects them and not me in the lab. So they never send this kind of email. But here's the kind of email that you should write. This slide was prepared by my colleague, Tom Brodnicki. So it's addressed to him. Direct the email specifically to the professor or the doctor or the associate professor that you're writing to. Start by introducing yourself. Give a little bit of information about why you're interested specifically in that project, and please attach your CV and a copy of your transcript. When we're looking for students to supervise, we want to see what subjects they've studied. So if I'm advertising a biochemistry project that requires a lot of expertise about understanding of amino acids and kind of computational structure, how things work structurally, I need to know that the students actually studied those subjects. And I also need to know that they haven't got a 55 on that really critical, important subject that's going to be essential for their work. So please send your grade transcript. We don't always reject students who have less than ideal grades. But obviously, if you have perfect scores, it's not going to be difficult to include your transcript. If you have some scores that are a bit less than perfect, maybe you want to put a little footnote explaining why that score didn't go so well, or how you're going to address that particular deficiency. Then I want you to include a paragraph about why you're interested specifically in this work that is being advertised as a project. Please tell me why you want to come and work on this project in my lab. I want to know about your passions. I want to know about your potentially your personal experiences that mean you want to work on cancer, or you have a strong interest in diabetes, or you're just, scientifically really interested in how CRISPR works and you want to learn that technique because it's a fantastic cutting edge technology. So please tell me in a paragraph why you want to come to my lab. And then finally, just finish with a little bit of information about how we should contact you and whether you are available for meeting and when you would be available for those meetings. Because that then allows us to check our schedule and immediately respond to you and say, hey, how about you come in on you've told me you're available Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. So I would say to you, please come in. If you can, come in at 3:00 next Monday or Wednesday and we can have a chat about the project. Or here's a Zoom link, let's catch up, or a phone number if you want to discuss something on the phone first. All right, and you might also want to indicate in your letter if you've already had some lab experience before, because for many projects this can be useful. If you're completely naive, you've never really picked up a pipette before, it's going to be quite challenging for you to work on a project that requires a lot of manipulation of cell lines. If you have no experience in writing code and kind of statistics, you're probably not very well suited to a bioinformatics project. So just describe a little bit about your experience and how it's relevant as well. All right. So hopefully that helps you a little bit about how to write your contact letter, and we're going to get lots of fantastic letters approaching us about student positions. So that's really just about organising a one-on-one meeting with the supervisor. And then you're going to, when you hear back from the supervisor, you can discuss the project and see whether it actually really suits you and your interests. In that meeting, you should also ask the supervisor about their expectations, what they want from the student, what they expect you to achieve, the hours that they expect you to be working. I should point out that honours, masters and PhD students are essentially considered full-time positions in terms of research in the lab. And you really need to be dedicating as much time to the research to achieve it, if as possible. But you should also ask the supervisor about what they can offer you. Will they give you the chance to publish your work or present it at conferences? Will you be interacting and collaborating with a large number of people, or are you going to be working in isolation mostly? So different things are suited to different people, but you want to know what resources are available for the project. You also want to know about past students from the lab. Have they been successful? Did they achieve what they set out to achieve at the start of the project? And did they overall have a good experience? And a way that you can get to that is actually to ask the supervisor if you could contact or speak to a couple of members of the current team or even the past team, if that's possible, because that will then give you a real insight into what it's like to work in that lab. The students and the current team members will hopefully be honest with you and tell you about the pros and cons of that particular project and that particular environment. But like Natalie said, everyone at SVI is very friendly. There's an opportunity to work in projects that are co-supervised, so you may have supervisors from 2 different labs, and that also gives the opportunity to work with lots of people. Finally, I encourage you to actually do this not just with one person. Don't just pick the project that you think is the best project on paper, speak to one supervisor, and then that's it. Really, this is something that could end up being the project and area of research that you work on for the next 2 or 3 or 4 decades if you're a medical researcher. And it's this point in your career that you may be making the decision about which avenue of research you actually follow. So I encourage you really strongly to meet with several potential supervisors, find the best fit in terms of the project and stuff that interests you, but also find the best fit in terms of the person and the people that you'll be working with. And different people like different supervision styles and different work styles. And it's really important that you work out that you find the right person right at the beginning. All right. So once you've got that project and the supervisor approves your candidature, so you need to have a supervisor agree to be your supervisor. We will work with you at SVI to set up that project and help with the enrolment process. So we've got students from several different different universities involved in different degrees, and the SVI student coordinator and supervisor can assist you with enrolment at your selected university. We're familiar with the processes and the key contact people at these universities in Melbourne. So once your supervisor approves your enrolment, they'll put you in contact with the student coordinator. And then you would be invited to SVI to undergo the orientation and safety training. And this just makes sure that you're covered, that you know all the important safety components, you know how everything operates and how it works. It's about a 1-day introduction. And then that sets you up for any other safety training that you're required to do. And then, of course, you just start your research project. So you figure out a start date with your supervisor. Then we just notify the HR department at SVI, and they'll set you up with an access card. They'll make you welcome. They'll show you where everything is, and someone from your lab team will hopefully get you started on lab experiments pretty soon afterwards, and before you know it, you'll be a scientist, and you'll be out changing the world. So at the at SVI, you've also got access to an admin team, an IT team, technical lab support. There's a human resources team, and there's a student coordinator, and they're all looking out for you. They want to help you with getting things going and working and operating smoothly, getting your project finished, getting you graduated. So, of course, we can't control the assigned coursework for you at your selected university. We are not a university. We are affiliated with the University of Melbourne and Australian Catholic University, but we don't actually offer directly the degrees ourselves. So any of the coursework and the final say on grades and everything else is decided by the university where you're enrolled. But of course, we want to help make sure that that goes smoothly. All right, as I mentioned at the beginning, there are going to be tours of the SVI labs at SVI, in Fitzroy. These tours are going to be held on the Friday, the 6th of September. You can scan this QR code, but I figured most people are not sitting at a Zoom link, at Zoom with the QR code. So I will also post it in the Zoom channel for you. When we get to the discussion session, I thought I might be able to do it then, but I can't actually do it. So I want you to register as soon as possible, because we will have limited space on those tours. But when you register, please let us know of up to 4 labs or supervisors that you'd like to visit, and we'll do our best to arrange a visit with one or more of the team members from that group on the day, so that you can see the lab, you can see what they have available, what projects are available, and what resources are present in that lab. All right, there'll be one session in the morning, and there'll be another session in the afternoon. We've got to figure out when the exact times will be. Okay, so I think that's the end of my all of the information that I had to get through to you. But please have a very quick think and deep think now about any questions you might have had of anything that I've presented. And I want you to also think about questions for the current students, and get them to really give you some good feedback about what life is like at St. Vincent's Institute. So what I'm going to do is ask those students if they could just turn on their cameras. Hopefully they're there. I haven't bored them off, or maybe they're doing experiments while they're actually participating in the we've got Sam, Lee, and Priya.
Andrew, it says you cannot start your video because the host has stopped it.
Okay, sure. John, are you actually online there at the moment? Can you let them do that? He may have stepped away as well. Oh, Natalie, you're on mute.
Yeah, good point. Priya and Lee, if you can unmute yourselves, then we'll get John to put your videos on when we can, but at least we can hear your voices.
Natalie, can I just ask, before we start with any of those introductions, did I miss anything there? Is there anything you feel like I didn't cover?
I don't think so. I've been answering some of the questions that have been coming up in the Q&A box, but pretty much everything you said about the different types of student categories that are there and the advice on how to make contact with us was right on the money, I think, Andrew.
Okay, great. All right, so we'll try and get the video sorted out. Natalie, can you send a quick through to Tom and see if we can get that, John, and see if we can get that sorted out? All right, so today we have three current students, Priya Vezivdar, Sam McNeil, and Lee Lee. So Priya's from the Bone Cell Biology and Disease Unit. Sam is from Immunology and Diabetes, and Lee is from Cardiac Regeneration. So maybe we can start with Priya, if you don't mind, just introducing yourself and giving a brief description of your project.
So I did my undergrad at Uni Melb. I did just a Bachelor of Science. And then now I'm doing honours this year in Nat Sim's lab, and I'm really enjoying it. My project's looking at the differentiation of osteoblasts, which are bone building cells. And I'm using a drug to treat them, 2 sets of mice, to basically see if that drug will increase precursors or mature osteoblasts. So yeah.
Cool. And so why did you choose SVI originally? What was your motivation?
I went for a few interviews and I just felt like there was a lot of talk about support here, which made me feel really good because I had very little lab experience. So it was a bit scary for me to jump straight into it. So yeah, just the support really made me choose SVI, I guess.
Great. And has that been your experience while you've been here as well?
Yeah, definitely. Everyone's very understanding. And yeah, everyone comes from a different background. So yeah, it's good.
Yeah, cool. All right. And Sam, did you want to just introduce yourself and your project? I think Lee, maybe you were made the host. You might be allowed. I don't know how that happened, but there we go. There's Lee. So everyone else can try putting their cameras on. There we go.
Beautiful.
Cool. All right. Sam, where are you going?
Yeah, sure. So I'm Sam. I actually moved over here from New Zealand to do honours in Helen Thomas's lab. My project's centered around type 1 diabetes, just lots of immunology, looking at T cells and trying to, I guess, deactivate them from attacking the beta cells in type 1 diabetes. So, yeah, that's a broad overview of my project.
Yeah, cool. So how do you do that? What kind of experiments are you doing to figure that out?
We work with mice. So we get we work with the spleens and the islets from mice and then run them through flow cytometry. So flow cytometry is my bread and butter, really.
Okay, cool. And can you just explain what flow cytometry is for the students who might not have?
Yeah, sure. So flow cytometry is when you take a sample of cells and you run them through, and something to do with lasers hitting the thing, and then you get to visualize the expression of specific molecules on the cells, and then you can work out what cell type they are based on that.
Yeah, that was pretty good. There you go. So you can see the communication training has done well for Sam. Oh, yeah. And Lee, maybe you can introduce yourself as well, please.
Hi, my name is Lee. I finished my bachelor from Monash University from pharmaceutical science, and I start my honors this year, and in the Max Lane cardiac regeneration group. So my project is mainly about the disease called Friedreich's ataxia. I believe most of people never heard about that. So the Friedreich's ataxia is an inherited rare neurodegenerative disease. And the cardiomyopathy, which is the heart disease, is the major cause of death for this disease. So for my project, we are mainly use the stem cell, which differentiate from the patient, Friedreich's ataxia patients. And then we found one very interesting gene called MAX3, which is highly expressed in the Friedreich's ataxia. So my project is mainly focused on this gene and how we regulate this gene expression level in this disease. Yeah.
Cool. And so what type of techniques are you using then in the lab?
So for the for the cells, I mainly focus on the endocellular cells and the smooth muscle cells, which they all differentiate from the stem cells, and which I got like 2 cell lines. One is use the CRISPR to like modify the healthy cell lines, one is the disease cell lines. And then for the assays, I use like metal salts, which to measure the superoxide ROS, reactive oxygen species, and also the TMRM, Ki67, like measure the cell proliferation, and PI, Hirsch for the cell variabilities. And also the cell teta blue, also for the metabolism disease, cell variability as well.
Great. Well, you're really doing a lot of different techniques there. So were you expecting that you would do that many different techniques in an honours year?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Wow. It sounds pretty amazing. So in terms of, so you're all honours students. What have you had many interactions with the St. Vincent Student Society and some of the activities at St. Vincent's?
Yeah, I've gone to a few of the events and met other students, and it's really good.
Yeah, cool. So what I'm a bit out of the loop actually. What kind of stuff are they doing normally for that social stuff?
We did a games night, we did trivia, went drinking one night as well. Yeah, just lots of different things.
Yeah, cool. And do you bump into the other students much?
Yeah, in tea room a lot.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I really enjoy kind of meeting people and hearing about their projects in the tea room as well. It seems like a really it's a great place for those interactions. And what kind of support have you found from SVI in terms of your honours projects? Sorry, that's a very general question. Maybe that's on my list here. What kind of support does SVI provide?
I feel like just in general, whenever I've had a question, I've gone to my supervisor and she's always led me in the right direction of where to go, and what I need to do. So yeah.
Cool. And so when you guys applied for your projects, how many different projects did you consider before you settled on the ones that you actually chose? Maybe Lee, would you like to go first on that one?
Before I came to here, actually I tried at least 20 or 30 projects because I'm really focused on the stem cell project. So that's why, like at the last stage, I focus as I choose these labs. Also, the lab also chose me as well.
Yeah, cool. Well, that's quite a long list. So, did you go and speak to all of those people, or was that just the number that you wrote to?
I think the number is what I write the letter to them, and also when I actually made around like 20 to 25. Yeah.
Okay, well, that's pretty good. So, and were they all at SVI, or were they just all over Melbourne that you looked?
I think also in Sydney as well, also in Japan. I try like different area. So
Okay. Oh, great. That's what I really like to hear. This the students who really compare and contrast as many different projects as possible and find the right one. And how about you, Sam?
I think Helen's like the only person I talk to, the only supervisor I talk to. But
well, there you go. Then the two extremes.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I asked around quite a bit, but I left it a bit late, like late October. I left it till, so they kind of just like didn't reply to me. But
Yeah,
Helen did, and she set up a Zoom, and then I thought she was pretty cool, so I was straight in.
All right, great. Well, I guess that's another tip then, is it, Sam? Get in early?
Yeah, get in early, email them, ask to meet up.
Yeah. Okay. So did you send a lot of, how many emails do you reckon you sent to get the one hit?
Oh, okay, probably like 5, but
okay,
they were all over the place, not just SVI. So I guess they all had students already, but if you get in early, you should be all right.
Yeah, cool. All right. And Priya, how about you?
Yeah, I'm a bit in the middle, like 4 or 5.
Yeah, cool. And so were they all in a particular topic
Yeah, I knew I wanted to do bone research, so it was all bone related.
Yeah, great. Oh, well, you've definitely picked the right place then.
Yeah.
And because I think that's an area that you should think about when you're trying to decide on a project. Is there a particular research question that you want to work on, like a topic, and we've heard that mentioned, stem cells and bone. But some people also like to work on want to learn a particular technique. You know, you might be interested in mass spectrometry or bioinformatics or structural biology. And so you can also come at it from that way. And often you can talk to a supervisor who may be a bioinformatics expert and say, well, look, I'm actually really interested in bioinformatics, but none of the projects that you're offering are really exactly up my alley. I'm actually interested in working on pancreatic cancer because my great-grandfather and grandfather both died of pancreatic cancer. Is there something project we could come up with together? So that is another way you can do it as well. And supervisors really like students who have that type of enthusiasm to at least pitch their own ideas in as well. So I don't know if any of you ever thought about doing something like that. Natalie, did you have any questions yourselves? We have got a few questions in the Q&A, but I was just, Natalie, do you have anything?
Yeah, I think Tanya and I have been jumping onto the questions in the Q&A, but I mean, also for the students who are listening, as opposed to those who are answering, feel free to type more questions into the Q&A. We're happy to answer them. Yeah, what questions would I ask? I guess one thing that a lot of students ask me when I have their interview is they'll often ask me if it matters whether they've got an experience in the topic that they want to work on, particularly because, my lab does bone research, and that's not something that people learn about a lot as undergraduates. And I think it's probably important for the students to know that, we're quite we don't expect students to come into the lab and know how to run techniques already before you start, because all of our techniques in all of our labs, regardless of whether it's a bone lab or a bioinformatics lab or a cancer biology lab or a genome stability lab, we're used to training students in what they need to learn. So it really doesn't matter really how much lab experience you've had, and particularly, we've all gone through COVID, and a lot of people didn't have much experience in doing lab work at all after that. And you learn the techniques on the job as you're going. So that's one common thing that I find students are worried about when they're applying for a position. But it's not so important. Somebody also put into the Q&A, asking about how relevant things are in your CV that don't have anything to do with laboratory-based research or research at all. Thanks. And I think those things are actually really important. So, if you've worked in retail, or if you've had volunteer experience, or if you're a member of a sporting club, or you play a musical instrument, all of that tells us something about you. It tells us that you've worked with others, that you've got discipline, that, you've been able to organize a group of people, like, even if you were involved in a student group at university or something like that. All those things are quite important, and they do tell us things about you. So don't be shy about what you put in your CV, and don't think that we're only going to care about, whether you know a particular stats package or something like that. We're interested in who you are as an individual. So put in any sort of information that you think might tell us who you are and what experience you've got.
Great. So I've got a couple more questions just for the students. I'll maybe get from them what they were looking. Maybe we could start with Priya, because you said you had 4 or 5 people that you interviewed with. What do you think makes a good supervisor? What did you see as a characteristic of someone that you would like to work with?
I think just supportive and being able to communicate is really important for me.
So did you feel that came across when you were meeting with supervisors, the ones who did and didn't have that? Or
there were definitely some that it was really obvious, and then some that I was like, oh, I don't know if I'm going to get as much support here.
Yeah, cool.
So,
yeah, so support's a really important aspect, isn't it? So it's just kind of speaking to other students around the place. Do you feel like the level of support at SVI has been good for students?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, definitely in my experience, at least.
Yeah, cool. All right. And Lee, what about for you? So you said you were very interested in a specific projects and techniques, but how much did you take into consideration the supervisor and the team that you would be working with?
So like based on my experience, sometimes like when I talk with some of the supervisor, I can realize they haven't read my CV at all, and then they are not interested in my like background or anything. So I more prefer the supervisor sometimes, like they introduce the project more specifically and also like tell me what can I learn from the project. That would be perfect for me. Yeah.
Yeah, cool. And Sam, did you have anything to add there? I guess you only interviewed with one, but you've perhaps had interaction with a lot more supervisors and other students, and you hear what they say. What do you get a general feeling about what makes a good supervisor?
Yeah, I think if it's someone that you can see yourself getting along with day to day, then that's a pretty good sign. You know, you could talk to someone who's an amazing researcher, but if you don't get along with them, it's going to be pretty painful for you, for everyone.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, that's true. So we've got one question I just want to quickly answer from the question and answer box. Someone has asked about the requirement for the WAM, which is the weighted average mark for entry to masters and to honours. So for honours, I think the cutoff is, well, we really need to have Amanda Edgley on board, but the cutoff I think is 80. For masters, it's a bit
Andrew, I
lower.
can jump in there because Tanya answered somebody before
Oh, she
asked
did.
about for honours, and the cutoff was
75.
75. Sorry, just a
For
minute.
honours. Okay, all right, got that wrong. So for masters, it's around the same or perhaps slightly lower. However, I guess it depends a little bit on the supervisor. For me, I receive a lot of applications for projects. You know, I can receive 10 to 15 applications, perhaps 20 some years, and there may only be 1 or 2 positions. So the WAM can potentially have a big influence on deciding which student. One thing you have to take into consideration is if you do want to be a PhD in the future, the entering with a WAM lower than about 80 into honours, it makes it quite challenging to get a PhD scholarship because you really have to get a very high score in honours to be competitive. So the master's program is encouraged for people who have that lower WAM, because then the WAM from your master's is the only thing that's considered in the scoring for the PhD scholarships. Yeah, but I think it comes on a case-by-case basis a little bit with the WAM. If the WAM is, you know, if a student comes to me with a WAM of 88, it's pretty hard to not have a chat with that student at least. If someone comes with a 75 or a 73, you would really look very closely at, you know, how well they structured their reasoning for wanting to come to your lab a lot more, the exact subjects that they'd studied and the relevance to what you're working on. For example, if, you know, they had some of their lower WAM is due to having lower scores in African dance or something like that, which is actually a subject at Melbourne University that one of my students did. But they had actually quite high scores in biochemistry or relevant topics, then I would definitely look past the lower average WAM. So yeah, it's going to depend a bit more on supervisors. I think if you're above 80, you'll be fine. If you're in that under 80 range, it's, yeah, just be a lot. You may find that you get fewer replies, but please be, you know, you're going to have to spend a bit more effort convincing people why you're the person for them. Someone else has asked about WAMs for summer studentships. No, there's not WAMs for those. However, again, they are very competitive. You know, there's more applicants than positions available. So yeah, you again just have to make a case about that. All right, someone's asked a really good question here for the students, and there's a mix of people in big and small labs. So someone's asked, an anonymous attendee has asked, do you prefer bigger or smaller labs? And what are the pros and cons of both? So maybe Sam, you're in quite a big lab. Do you want to start off with talking about the pros and cons of working in a bigger lab?
Yeah, so my lab is quite big. I guess it's good to have a wide variety of people who you can ask questions. You know, there's a wide variety of expertise. So there's lots of different people you can ask for advice on how to do an experiment or how to write something without your supervisor getting sick of you asking them a question all the time, maybe. I don't know. I don't really see any cons in my lab because it's not huge, but you know, it's not small. So, I mean, I love it. It's perfect. I can't see any cons with it. Yeah.
Okay, that's great to hear. Priya, you're in a mid-sized lab. Is
I
that right?
think, yeah.
Yeah.
I guess not so big a lab. You have more one-on-one interactions with the people, I suppose, and you can get to know people a lot better, which I've definitely found. Talk to everyone. Yeah, it's good.
Yeah. I'm not sure if I can ask you cons because your supervisor's right there next to you in the window.
No,
but,
I'm like Sam. There's not many cons.
Yeah. Okay, that's good. And Lee, Max's lab's a bit on the smaller side. So what's that like?
I feel like for the small lab, you can work really closely with your supervisor. Once you got questions, you can directly find them. And also when you get like technical issues stuff, you can directly find them. And the other, for example, our RA, they are quite supportive. So from now on, it's pretty good to work in the like small lab. Yeah.
Okay. That's good. Hopefully that answers the question. Someone else has asked what is considered a large lab and a small lab. So that's actually probably the biggest labs would be maybe 15 to 20 people. And the smaller labs are just a couple of maybe 2 or 3 people. But again, even when you're working with one of the smaller labs, you're probably going to be working as part of a bigger team. Anyway, so do you feel that cover those numbers are about right? Yeah, I mean, I'm ahead of a lab that's on the bigger side. I've got 14 people in my lab. I consider that probably bigger than maybe I can manage. So certainly one con to the students in working in a bigger lab is that they do get less of my time because it's a bigger group. But on the flip side, there are a lot more people within the group that they can ask the questions to. They don't have to ask me everything. And all the students who come and work in my lab have a supervisor who's a postdoc in addition to me. So that would be the person that they would be working with kind of closely more day to day as well. And I think a lot of students might find that they're not necessarily working directly with the lab head. They'll be working with a research assistant or a postdoc who's highly trained in the area. And those people are great to be learning from because they're the people who've, they've got the most recent expertise. They know how to do the experiments. I very rarely pick up a pipette these days, unfortunately. Yeah. So in terms of the work-life balance in the honours year, how have you found that, Lee? Have you found it that you've been able to manage all the different aspects of what's expected of you in the lab versus all the other parts of your life?
I feel from now, like the past few months, my lab work is quite intense. But once you get used to like know how to do the axis and also culturing stuff, it's you will learn lots of like time management stuff. So it's become easier and you got like more time on your writings. Yeah. So I think the time management is quite key for your honors. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and you definitely see the students who don't have those time management skills. Those are they're the ones who find honours quite challenging. And I think, Natalie, you mentioned about looking on a CV, putting on a CV whether you've worked before. I think you sometimes get students who come into honours and they've not really even had a part-time job, and I think then you're exposed to basically full-time employment, and perhaps more because there's the pressure associated with getting results and everything being assessed. So having that ability to manage your time, I think that's a really important aspect when you're thinking about undertaking honours and masters. Have you got that ability to do that? And supervisors will ask you that, hopefully, when they're interviewing you, about your time management skills and about your capacity for balancing all these things. But it is an intense year. And how's your do you feel the same way, Sam? Is that how you found the honours year?
I think, yeah, work-life balance is pretty good for me. The only time I guess it gets stressful when you've got like a big assignment coming up, like the literature review was pretty intense near the end. But I guess if you start it earlier, you'll be better off. But no, it's pretty good. It's just 9 to 5, just like a full-time job. Sometimes you have to stay late due to like logistics of an experiment or something, but yeah. And I guess it depends what lab you're in. Hopefully you don't get forced to come in on the weekend to do experiments or anything, but sometimes you might have to. It's
Yeah, that's right. And we don't often that's something people would, with depending on the project that you're working on, you may have to do, working on weekends or after hours work. But certainly I never push my students to do extra time beyond, a regular working week. And somebody here in the Q&A session has asked, is it possible to or recommended to work part-time during honours? So do either any of you guys have part-time jobs, and you can comment on that?
I work as well, and yeah, it's just as long as you manage your time, you'll be fine.
Yep. So is that kind of on evenings and weekends, or do you juggle?
I just do weekends.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah. And Sam, everyone was nodding their head actually. So do you want
to? Yeah, I've started working at like a restaurant on the weekends. It's probably not ideal to be working like during the day, during the week. You're kind of expected to be at the lab during those hours, but yeah, I guess a nighttime or a weekend shift is probably what job is what you're probably going to have to get.
Yep. And Lee?
So for me, I feel it's quite important. Before I start my project, I talk with my supervisor, like I got another job. So like what kind of time, like how many time I can work on my project. Yes.
Yeah. All right. And I certainly, the students who I have in my group, I think all have part-time jobs as well. And unfortunately, it's just a reality in the current environment. But I also I had a part-time job when I was an honours student, and even as a PhD student, I was working a bit extra. So it's definitely, we're not expecting you to be in the lab chained to the bench. All supervisors understand that students have lives outside of work, outside of their enrolled projects, and certainly you should discuss that with any supervisors that you might be working with as well, if you feel like that could be something that might be an issue for you, or if you did have to work on weekdays, whether that the supervisor would have flexibility in that. Generally, like Sam said, it's not recommended that you work during the work hours, because we want students to be in the lab when the supervisors are in the lab, and that's just a kind of both safety aspect, but also for learning. You need to be around when you're being by the person training you. All right. So there's a couple of other questions in here, but they're more just about around the technical aspect of applications. So I'll just very quickly answer those. One from Mona about whether there's opportunities available for master's graduates other than PhD projects. A lot of supervisors don't specifically write master's projects. They'll write projects that are suitable for both master's or PhDs. So you should definitely, if there's an area of research you're interested in, someone you want to work with, you can write to them specifically if you know that they're working on something that they haven't advertised as a project. The questions relating to WAM, someone asked about Bachelor of Biomed versus Bachelor of Arts. We don't really accept students with Bachelors of Arts. Basically, everyone has a science or a biomedical degree. So the WAM is really majority of students are coming in from Bachelor of Biomed or Bachelor of Science. So not sure that really applies. So consider the previous answer to my question for biomedical students. Then being accepted by a supervisor for a project, what's the process for communicating with the university running the honours degree? So the Department of Medicine, who a lot of our honours students enrol through Melbourne University, is actually right next door to us at SVI on the St Vincent's campus. So we have very close links with their honours program. So it's that's something that's just managed. Any other universities is managed via our student person. So you really just best talking to to the potential supervisor about, how that would be particularly managed for your university. You can actually, if you enrolled through a different university, move over to University of Melbourne to do your honours. You don't have to do your honours at the same university that you did your undergraduate degree. Okay, there's a question for the speakers. That's good. Why did you guys decide to take honours over masters? That's actually a very good question. Lee, maybe you can go first this time because I think I've been asking you last a bit.
Why? I think because I feel master's coursework is more intense and hard for me. Especially I heard from they go winter coursework something. It's 2 weeks and quite intense. So that's why I directly give up.
Okay. And Sam, did you ever consider the masters or did you just go straight for honours?
No, I never considered masters. I think primarily because masters is 2 years and honours is less than 1. So I kind of like to get stuff done quick. So I can then move on to the next thing. But yeah, I guess masters is probably good if you know what you want to do and you don't want to rush it. But yeah, I guess, and also I was not 100% sure on where I wanted to go, which is why honours is always good because you don't have to commit to it for 2 years. It's just a few months, well, 8 months.
And Priya?
Yeah, I agree with Sam. It was more so I'd never done research before and wasn't sure if I'd be able to do 2 years of it. And yeah, just the coursework aspect of it and all that.
Okay, that's good. And certainly I can give the flip answer because I currently have a master's student and I said to her, why don't you want to do honours? Because she had very good marks and was considering academic career. And she told me that she wanted to spread it over 2 years because she felt she didn't want to rush it, but she also wanted to do some additional coursework learning about commercialization of science. And so she found that really beneficial to complement her project. So that's another reason that you might choose master's over honours. Is there a preference for which uni you complete your degree at honours? Are you guys all enrolled at Melbourne University? Yeah, so Melbourne University is the easiest because we have the closest. Most of the supervisors, or pretty much all of the supervisors, will have appointments and affiliations through the University of Melbourne. If you enroll through a different university, some lab heads will have appointments at those universities, but very few. So you will have to have an additional supervisor who's based at that university, because that's just the rules. So that can complicate things a little bit, but for a good student, everybody will happily work that out. But yeah, like I said, you can change to Melbourne University if you want to not have that issue. Okay, do we get many applicants from a medical background? Yes, I currently have a PhD student who's a clinical transplant hematologist at the Royal Children's Hospital, and she's come to learn about how to do gene editing in the patient samples that the children that she's working with in the hospital. So she's actually quite advanced in her career, but we also have students in medical degrees who can come and work as part of their coursework in a research project. We love working with people from a medical background because they're the ones who know what the clinical problems are. Whereas, people working in research, we know what the scientific problems are, but we don't know what the day-to-day patient problems are. So having people from a clinical background come and do master's or PhD is always fantastic. And it's a steep learning curve from the beginning because, you know, they haven't done all the basic lab things, but we've found that medical students take really well to working in the lab environment. So I've already answered the question about doing a job, working while doing honours or masters. Okay, what do people usually do after honours? Okay, we'll maybe do this as a hypothetical then for you guys. What would you like to do after you finish honours? And then perhaps Natalie and I can talk a little bit about some of our honours students and where they've gone. So Sam, do you want to go first about maybe thinking about what you'd like to do after your honours?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think I'd prefer to like work maybe as a research assistant or something along those lines for at least a few months, and then possibly do a PhD after that. Or yeah, I'm not too sure yet, but I definitely want to keep going in this area. That's for sure.
Yeah. So you've had a good experience in the research lab environment, then that
Yeah.
you want to keep going. Yeah,
for sure.
And have you considered any further study, or is that honours the end for you?
Oh no, I definitely want to keep going after this in one way or another.
Yeah. Okay, cool. And Priya?
Yeah, I'm the same. I think PhD might be next.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. Natalie nodded her head favourably then, so that's that's a good sign. And Lee, what about you?
Because when I finish my bachelor degree, I go and work for 1 year as a chemist. So that's why I come back, because I realize I don't like the chemist at all. So I want to come back and continue I definitely, when I finish the honors, I will continue my PhD. But yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So Natalie, what have some of your honours students done? And I won't ask you how many honours students you've had over the years, but what have they gone on to do? Some of the examples.
A range of things. So some people have stayed on to do PhDs. Other people have gone on to medicine or physiotherapy or dentistry. One of my past honours students became an agronomist, so he's an agricultural scientist now. One of them went on to do a master's in genetic counselling. So they've gone on to a range of different things. Weirdly, I'm just thinking about it, I don't think any of them stayed at the same level and got a job just working in a lab. They've all gone on to other things, either within research or in healthcare or soil science. Yeah, so a range of things. And then look, there's some who I'm not sure what they've ended up doing. Oh, one ended up in IT as well.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, big range of things.
Yeah.
What about
cool.
you, Andrew?
Well, I've had honours students who've gone on to other degrees. So a few have gone on to do medicine. I've definitely had one who went and became into optometry. So I guess that maybe they're leaving research after doing things in my lab gets to be a bit of a worry. But I've also had many honours students who've stayed on and do PhDs. Several who are currently enrolled as PhD students.
Yeah.
And that, you know, that's always great because you've got someone starting a PhD who's already got like a 1 year head start in the project area. They already know everyone in the lab, the supervisor, I know them, so I can, you know, I can see that they've got what it takes. And I've also, one of my honours students is now working for the World Health Organization, and I think one at CSL in biotech. So definitely people go on and work. And a couple, actually, I think 2 are working in like diagnostics. So still in the medical research space, but there's a big demand for people working in that kind of area as well. So honours can take you lots of different places. I think if you've made the commitment to do honours, it's usually people who either want to stay in medicine or medical research, and it's always exciting to see where they end up down the line. Okay, so someone's asked a question: is it recommended to go straight from an honours to a PhD, or is it better to gain some experience working as an RA? So I guess we've heard a couple of different opinions from the students about maybe one's thinking about going to work as an RA and one for a bit, and one perhaps straight onto a PhD. But Sam, why are you considering going to work as a research assistant for a bit rather than straight on to the PhD?
Well, I've heard from multiple PhD students that you've definitely got to want to do it to succeed, and also going straight into it, they wish they worked for a bit to like either have a break from study or, you know, get more lab experience, or I don't know, just go on holiday, go to Europe or something. So yeah, that's what I'm basing that decision off.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, even
Yeah.
for students who go directly from honours to PhD, you've got to have a decent chunk of break in there, because you're right, it is full on. Otherwise, you're just going from study to study.
Yeah.
And Priya, I mean, I won't ask you the specifics about when you exactly want to start your PhD, because I don't want to cause any conflicts. But what about you? If you were to go straight into a PhD, like, what would be the pros and cons of that, do you reckon?
I think just because I've been enjoying honours so much, and it's really surprised me how much I am enjoying it. Yeah, kind of just keep going and smash it out, I guess. I'm sort of just like to get everything done at once, I guess.
Yeah. Cool. All right. I guess one other benefit of going straight from honours to PhD with a good, holiday or break in between, is that you've really got momentum already from that honours year. You start off pretty slow the first few months in honours, you're getting familiar with the techniques, you're reading a lot to understand the field. But by the end of it, you're really flying, you're really coasting, and you actually do have a lot of skills and techniques up your sleeve, and you can use that momentum to kind of launch straight into a PhD project. After a few months break, you can launch straight into that PhD project, and you've got all of that momentum that's come out of the honours year. Obviously, that only works if you stay on in the same lab where you did your honours and continue your PhD, or a related field or topic. I think if you then switch to a different project, a different field, you do step back a little bit. But even then, you still do have a reasonable amount of momentum that'll keep you going, get you started. So hopefully that's the two sides of the story. Getting the experience, getting a bit of time just away from study can be really good. But then other things happen in your life, and you might not get that opportunity to come back to being a student again as well. So that can be a plus or a minus for you depending on your situation. So, all right, I reckon we're getting pretty close to the end of these questions. And just if anyone else has other things that they want to ask, please chuck them in just while we've got these three fantastic students given all the insight to us. There's okay, so one person has asked, after honours and masters, if we go for work, would the recruiters prefer masters or honours, or consider them the same? I don't know about that one. Yeah, I think if you graduate with a good set of experiences, good marks, you've got a good relationship with your supervisor, that they'll write you a recommendation letter. The experience that you get from both masters or honours, I think, would be beneficial. It's going to depend a little bit on the job. If you're working outside of science, maybe masters might be rated slightly higher. But we're working within science, I think researchers appreciate that they're equivalent in terms of the training that they provide. So, yeah, it's a difficult question to answer, that one. And how many people continue the same project that they did in their honours and masters into a PhD? From my experience, about half of my honours students have continued on to do a PhD. None of them have gone on to do a PhD somewhere else. So I like to think I have a higher retention rate. But not there's anything wrong with going on to do a PhD somewhere else, particularly if you've learned that you don't like that topic or you don't get along with the supervisor, then of course you'd be stupid to stay on with the same supervisor to do your PhD. Yeah, so generally people will take that momentum and they fall in love with the project. I think that's kind of what happens. You already in the year that you spend doing honours or a couple of years that you spend doing masters, you learn a project inside out and you almost want to do more. You want to do the next set of experiments. You know that it's a good project or how to make it a good project. What are the elements that you should pursue if you're going to keep doing it for a few years? So I think that really helps. You can't answer that question necessarily for every single person and every single project, because you might find a few months into your honours project that you don't want to be working on this for another 3 or 4 years. Yeah. All right. There's always lots more questions coming through. What advice do you guys give for succeeding in honours, and what's something you wish you'd known before starting? Do you want to give that one a go, Lee?
That is a really hard question. Because the first things I am not succeeding in my honors. But yeah, if I do it again, probably at the start I will do much more readings as much as possible about my project. Which is better, like good for you to understand more about your project. It's also help you to understand what kind of like technique you will use in the later on. And the second one, the key, as I mentioned in the previous questions, the time management is really important. So because you have during the honors year, it's not like the coursework. You have to do in the same time, you have to do the coursework plus the experiments. And also you need analyze data and writing. Sometimes you do the presentation as well. So this time also, if you got the part-time work, so this time the time management, which it become really important. And what else? And also like for me, I feel like always communicate with your supervisor, and because there are a lot of things can be happens, especially if you are really new to the lab. You always easy to make mistakes. So but for me, don't worry about making mistakes. Everyone can make it, and just like be honest to them and tell them and learn from that mistakes. So I think that's all from me. Yeah.
Great. That was actually very insightful, Lee. Thank you. And Sam?
Yeah, definitely start doing all your coursework like early so you can gradually chip away at it rather than, trying to do it in the last week or whatever. Yeah, sort of like what Lee said, make sure you're communicating with your supervisor, ask them what their expectations are of you, like right from the get-go, just so you don't get stitched up or, you don't succeed well in the lab or something. Like, yeah, make sure they, what they expect of you. And yeah, just, I don't know, try enjoy your project and read up on it and try, yeah, do the best you can, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, and definitely it sounds like you guys have chosen projects that were interested in before you started and you're very passionate about. So I think that's a really important part to succeeding, is to be working on a project that you're actually enthusiastic and interested in, not just kind of something that you came to you easily. So yeah, that's my suggestion. And Priya, did you have anything as well?
I'd say just ask lots of questions. Yeah, there's really no such thing as a dumb question. And don't get worked up if things don't go the way they were supposed to, because you still get results at the end of the day, if it's good or bad. You have something to write about.
Yeah, great. All right, there's actually one here for you and I, Natalie. As supervisors, what is something that you like to see in a student?
Are you going to go first?
Okay, so for me, like obviously students who've they've obviously studied the area that, I mean, we're a pretty strong biochemistry, cell biology lab. So if people apply to me and they've just done physiology and statistics and unrelated fields, that's a no to me, even if they get good marks, because I can tell that they weren't really interested in it, that area of research before. Unless, of course, they preface their letter and say, oh, well, I used to work in this area, but now I'm really excited about your area, then I might reconsider that. But I think just having students who are really enthusiastic and kind of passionate about science, even if it's just broadly interested in science and how things work, I think that's a really critical part of being a good scientist, is just being inquisitive, asking lots of questions and wanting to know more about something. I think a lot of students, they just want to know the minimum to pass or to get a good grade, and they just want to do rote learning. But actually, that's not what it takes to be a good scientist. It's not just about kind of accumulating knowledge. It's being able to take that knowledge, connect the dots and kind of create new knowledge. That's what science is about. And if you don't have people who have that spark, who have that enthusiasm and interest, then yeah, I also will usually say no. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, my answer is quite similar. I think that the two things that first come to my mind that I like to see in students is curiosity. So if I'm having an initial meeting with a student and you know, they're asking me questions that obviously come from a place of wanting to learn, then I find that really inspiring, because that's someone who really has a research oriented mind, because they're looking for answers and they're wanting to know how things work. And also, you know, being prepared. When a student's prepared for meetings, that really shows that they're interested in the topic and that they're taking the initiative to do their own thinking. Which doesn't mean, you know, as a student you have to read every paper that a lab's ever published. But if you know a little bit about the work that we're already doing, and when you're actually working in the lab, so let's say you've already got into the lab, you've already started doing honours, if you come to the weekly meetings and you've got questions that you want to ask me about what you've been doing in the last week, that's also quite impressive. So sort of being prepared and being engaged, just really engaging with the process of honours is really, really important to me. Yeah.
Good. All right. I think we finally dried up the questions.
I think we have.
Oh,
there was one there about internship opportunities, or are you just about to get to that one?
Yeah, so I think that one, usually the internships, we don't take interns, we don't actually allow internships because of there's various laws around exploitation of people working for nothing. So you can only come to SVI and work if it's part of a legitimate university study degree, or if it's part of the summer studentship program that we run. That's the closest thing we have that's an internship, and the information will be available for that on the website kind of usually around October or early November. If there's a particular lab or project that you're interested in doing a summer studentship with, you should write to that person, you know, whenever you're ready, and just tell them, I'm interested in doing a summer studentship in your lab. Are you going to be offering them this year? Sometimes supervisors hadn't even considered offering a studentship, but if they get someone who writes to them like that, they will take that person. So yeah, use some initiative there, and you know, you can open those doors for yourself. Okay, let's call it a wrap. Thank you so much to the students for giving up your time, especially when it is starting to get into the pointy end right now. I'm guessing you're already started work on your theses and putting together figures and writing discussions, hopefully.
Yeah. Getting this
like, should be. Yeah, good. All right. Certainly, if you have other questions, you can contact us through the SVI website. There's contact details for the student coordinator or any kind of more specific questions. Or like I said, always just reach out sooner rather than later to anyone that you're interested in coming to do a project with. And hopefully you'll get lots of replies and organise lots of meetings for a chat. Cool. Thanks, Natalie, also for giving up your time. And yeah, I'll let everyone get back to their evenings. Thanks for coming along tonight. There'll be a recording of this on that'll be put onto YouTube. Everyone who registered will get a link to that. And also apologies, the link to the registration for the tours is actually not currently up on the SVI website. I didn't check it before I posted it. I'll organise for that to be fixed, and we'll email that around to all the people who registered for tonight's meeting as well, so that you can register and come along next Friday and see SVI for yourself. All right. Thanks, everyone. And,
Thanks a lot, Andrew.
yeah, have a nice evening.
See ya.
Bye-bye.
Thanks.